Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs, National Security, Legal Affairs and Information, Dr. the Honorable Ralph Gonsalves, the Honorable Frederick Stevenson, Minister of the Public Service, Consumer Affairs and Sports, and the MP for South Windward, the Honorable Frederick Stevenson, Minister of Agriculture, Forestry, Fisheries, Rural Transformation, Industry and Labour, the Honorable Sabuto Caesar, Minister of Education, the Honorable Curtis King, CEO of the Medicinal Cannabis Authority, Dr. Gerald Thompson, and CEO of Caribbean Gold Standard Labs, Mr. Matthias Piasecki. I hope I got that correctly. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Welcome again to this opening ceremony of the Analytical Service Provider Facility at the Medicinal Cannabis Authority. This facility is a first of its kind and one that will seriously and greatly enhance the services here of the MCA as we seek to develop a wellness industry, a medicinal cannabis industry that would benefit St. Vincent and the Grenadines. To speak more about this facility and also about what the MCA is doing, let me welcome to the podium to your constituency.
I hope that the cannabis plant in front is not preventing Sion from seeing. Dr. the Honorable Ralph P. Gonsalves, Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, parliamentary and cabinet colleagues, Minister of Agriculture, Sabuto Caesar, Curtis King, the Minister of Education, Mr. Matthias Piasecki, CEO of Caribbean Gold Standards Limited, Dr. Gerald Thompson, the CEO of the Medicinal Cannabis Industry here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I recognize the presence of the Chief Medical Officer and other members of the Medicinal Cannabis Industry Committee here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And those of you well-wishers who are here with us this morning, a very pleasant good morning and welcome to the most beautiful constituency in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, the constituency of South Windward. I'm very happy and delighted to have you here this morning for this very special opening ceremony of the Analytical Service Provider Facility here at Rivulet. It is indeed a beautiful morning here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I was told by Dr. Gerald Thompson that this facility is the first of its kind in the OECS, the first of its kind, and we want to welcome it to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And I want to especially thank Caribbean Gold Standards for choosing St. Vincent and the Grenadines for having this beautiful facility. Here in South Windward, we are continuing the development as we continue to work despite the side shows. This government continues to perform its duty as a responsible government here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And if you look just down the road, you'd see the construction work has started on the Holiday Inn Express Hotel there at Diamond. On the opposite side of the river there, that is in the constituency of East St. George, Camilo Gonsalves, who wants to own this facility and own this part. He wants to steal it away from me, but I'm not giving him that opportunity to do so. We have a $27 million project for Correys and Hazels, and pretty soon, in the month of October, a wonderful facility is going to be built at Diamond for the purposes of enhancing the young people's through skills training, among other things, here in this constituency. Once again, it is my pleasure to welcome all of you to this ceremony this morning and pray God's continued blessing upon St. Vincent and the Grenadines and our people. Thank you very much. God bless.
Thank you very much, Minister Stevenson. This facility is a public-private partnership between the Medicinal Cannabis Authority and the Caribbean Gold Standard. The MCA has invested over $700,000 in terms of building costs, and Caribbean Gold Standard has provided the equipment for this facility. At this juncture, let me invite the CEO of Caribbean Gold Standard, Mr. Matthias Yasaki, to address us.
Good morning. First of all, thank you all very much. On behalf of Caribbean Gold Standard, I can't stress how great it is to be here and how much this partnership means to us, as well as it may mean for the industry itself. We've been here for quite a while working on this project, and today marks the finish of one phase of this project, but the beginning of what we hope to be a very long and very fruitful endeavor with not only the medicinal cannabis industry, but with St. Vincent and the population as a whole. When we first arrived in St. Vincent back in 2018, working with Dr. Thompson and the Minister Caesar, understanding the need, understanding the direction of the medicinal cannabis industry as it was meant to be presented here versus in some of the experience we have coming from the States, we immediately saw the passion and the dedication to show how serious and how technically supported this industry was meant to be. We really felt gravitated towards everyone here at the MCA and everyone here in the ministry that has worked on this project because of that serious attention to the details and the desire to make sure they were providing the best and most up-to-date services as not only a lab, but as a regulatory body and as an industry setting forth to improve patient care and experience and educate everyone on the opportunity that this creates. The effectiveness of THC and CBD are still being realized more and more every day. But from a personal experience watching my grandfather struggle with Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, had my family known about the potential benefits of this medicine, we would have seen a much different end to his life and a much more fruitful opportunity to watch his sunset come. The financial impact is obviously something that cannot be stressed or not given its credit. It is very difficult doing something remotely, but it is also very difficult continuing to support that endeavor through all of the challenges that we've faced. COVID continues to present a challenge for all of us, and it doesn't go without its challenges here with the lab. Our volcano did not help either, but the dedication of everyone here at the MCA and our ability to stay on task has proven that we not only intend to stay here, but we intend to grow along with everyone here as this industry gets off the ground. We really enjoy the opportunity to grow and learn with everyone in this industry and the partners that have come from all aspects across the different sects and avenues that we round this out to. We've been able to appreciate the work being done by our invested farmers, the growers, the traditional cultivators, the local farmers, and all of them have been so gracious in letting us visit their farms, get an understanding of their challenges as well, and where we intend to support and help them to advance their opportunities here, as it means more opportunity for everyone in the industry. More importantly, as we got to understand those individuals and build relationships, we also saw that our lab, being the high complexity lab and able to do what it will, has a much larger impact than we may have understood. To me, God doesn't always give us our plan until He's ready to, but it was when we were here getting things in their final state that we realized we were where we were supposed to be. I'm very happy to be here and very excited to see everything that's going to continue to grow and prosper within the industry itself, but across other industries that are going to benefit from our ability to test the products that are already being done and made here in St. Vincent. I believe that the local quality of everything here is actually undervalued in its nature, and where it's not maybe to where it needs to be, we will help to get it there in our continued partnerships. When we first were introduced and started this partnership, we intended to be testing medicinal cannabis, and that is the forefront of our lab. But more so, we realized the impact of our lab and the impact of our partnership with the MCA and the authority across the ministries for being able to provide more education, more purpose, resourcing of more opportunity for work here in the technical space and the science space that we will be able to provide, and to continue to expand into other sects where we can also provide some opportunity. Without stressing it further, I want to just say thank you to everyone here and for all of the support we have been already given, and for your continued support as the lab gets running and we start to bring more and more products in for testing and expanding our ability to test across multiple industries. A special thank you to Dr. Thompson, to Minister Sabato, to Dr. Cummings, to the Prime Minister for having us here in our partnership with you, and we cannot stress how grateful we are for this opportunity, along with our board, our investors, our partnerships with AIM Analytical Service, ASA, the Scientific Service, their structure and ability to bring the forefront of the technology on the committees that drive the decisions that are being made in this industry to St. Vincent, allowing St. Vincent to be that forefront here in the Caribbean. Caribbean Gold Standard was not a name that we picked half-heartedly. We do believe that with our endeavor and with the partnerships that we're developing here, that St. Vincent will be the gold standard in the Caribbean for testing medicinal cannabis and overall quality of products within the Caribbean. The partnerships beyond St. Vincent and in the region as a whole, we want to stress we are here to assist in every way we possibly can, and we'll continue to support every endeavor as we can see our role in that support. I want to thank everyone one last time for your time and for your ability to let me talk this long. I cannot stress enough that I'm very grateful, and I cannot go without saying how truly humbling it is to be in front of a group like this and to be partnered with a group like this, and the purpose that everyone shares for bringing the best quality, the safest use, and the most up-to-date technology and education for these ongoing medicinal industries as we move forward. Thank you all very much for your time, and I appreciate getting to work with you in the future.
Thank you very much, the CEO of Caribbean Gold Standard, Mr. Matthias Yasaki. This country, not so long ago, embarked on the creation of a medicinal cannabis industry, which has expanded into a wellness industry. And for this authority, Dr. Gerald Thompson was the individual chosen to grow this very young industry. And in 2001, when Dr. Thompson was a politician, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines had just started liberalizing the telecom sector, and you would guess, who was the minister that was chosen to deal with the liberalization, the growth and expansion of the telecom sector? Dr. Gerald Thompson. And today, we have a very vibrant telecom sector in this region. So I'm going to welcome Dr. Thompson to speak to you.
And I want to formally welcome the Honorable Prime Minister, and many of you are here for the first time at the MCA headquarters. I and my staff and the board of the MCA are proud of our many achievements in spite of the pandemic and the volcanic eruption, and are geared to meet all other challenges that we will probably no doubt face. And as we continue to create and regulate this industry. Now, Spirit, in telling me about the history of cannabis, told me that in the late 60s, when cannabis actually first came here, that individuals used to try and gather the leaves and smoke the leaves. They didn't realize that at the time that it was the flower that actually had in the active ingredients. Well, that soon changed. And you know, there are lots of older individuals who take the cannabis root and boil it to gain some sort of benefit or so. Well, I tell you, the leaves have only a fraction of what's in the cannabis flower. And the roots, an even smaller amount. But we believe that the root may well have some very interesting compounds. And this may be the scope for research that will obviously take place in the industry as we utilize the lab. Now, in my brief remarks, I want to focus just on two aspects of the cannabis industry. It's about the science and the realities of modern export, a modern export-oriented medicinal cannabis industry. And the first relates to the importance of this lab and the milestone it creates for this nation and its quest to create an export-oriented industry. Now, the public-private partnership that we have created with Validity and Caribbean Gold Standard focuses on the experience of these laboratory specialists and the fact that they have already are in the process of hiring 100% local staff and training them to run and operate this lab. Now, and we are faithful and confident they will also operate this according to the verifiable international standards, something you would probably not hear about, the ISO 17025 standards. So what about the equipment that's here in this lab? It's all about accuracy, credibility, and speed. And it's also about scope. You've heard that the possibilities for testing other sectors, fish export, arrowroot starch, fresh produce, and beverages, to know exactly what's really inside them. And really, as part of their business plan, they're hoping to have St. Vincent and Grenadines something of a testing hub for a wider geographic area. I like to think of myself as being a microbiologist. I think of myself as a microbiologist. I got my first job in England when I went there at the age of 20. Well, ask me how old I am now, you know. And we had to grow viruses and use an electron microscope to test them. This whole process took about 5 days, 6 days to get the results. Well, today things have changed. I'm sure it's now a household name, hearing about a PCR test and a PCR machine. Well, inside this lab, there's a microbiology room. And they also have a PCR machine. But it's not to test for COVID-19. It's to test for bacteria like E. coli and Salmonella and other germs that you don't want on your products. And it's essential that they must be absent. And so the use of the PCR, the sophisticated PCR machine that they have in their microbiology lab is really going to be phenomenal. But in their main lab, they also have these other computerized equipment that the names, we'd have to get a lesson in terms of what the names really are. High potency liquid chromatography, HPLC, which tests for the actual active ingredients in cannabis to know the quantity and the ratios. And they're not just testing for THC. We know the substance that mainly gets you probably high, but they're testing for 11 other cannabinoids. And soon you'll be hearing about CBG and CBN and CBC. And these things are essential to be able to put on labels to know exactly what's inside. They have equipment that will check for terpenes, the substances that gives the aroma from cannabis. And they also have a series of other equipment. One of those pieces of equipment in one of those rooms is equipment that would test for heavy metals. It's critical that there's no lead, mercury, arsenic, cadmium, and nickel present in these products. And in order to export, you have to make sure all these things are absent. They also have equipment to test for pesticides, 95 different pesticides, many that we've never used here in St. before, but to export, you have to show that these pesticides are absent. And collectively, the tests are going to produce what's called a certificate of analysis, a COA, which can serve, you've heard me mention this before, as a passport for export. It will serve as a passport for export, or to enable export. And so this lab is really quite phenomenal, and how it may be utilized in other sectors, fisheries, arrowroot, and so I think that it will certainly help to boost the potential for export of products. But there's another important thing in terms of the science. The test in the lab will test the finished product more so. But what about the cultivation, the process of cultivation? Well, people who were involved in banana farmers like Satishera and so forth would have known about global gap and fair trade. With cannabis and herbs, we talk of good agricultural and collection practice, GACP. And something very interesting has just happened. One of the companies is in the process of potentially exporting, but they have to be assessed. And they have to have a team to come into St. Vincent and the Grenadines from, let's say, a European country to check if they have been doing their production, cultivation according to GACP standards. Because of COVID-19 and travel restriction, because of hesitancy, when probably some people may not want to get vaccinated, their team cannot come to St. Vincent and Grenadines. And I am really proud of my inspectorate, because the MCA is being called and contacted so as to, if the MCA could do the GACP audit on behalf of the company there in Europe. They have been looking at our legislation. They've been looking at the way in which the MCA is being set up. And I think that in some publications around the region, Latin America, it is said that the MCA and the cannabis industry in St. Vincent is well regulated, and we're particularly proud of that. But to know that, one, that they and other entities could be asking the MCA to conduct their audit for them, and to also send us something to say, please indicate how much you will charge to conduct the audit, that has put a smile on my face, you know? But in general, the achievements of the MCA in the cannabis industry and our partners, friends in terms of Caribbean Gold Standard, these achievements has really, I mean, if you look at my face, you see my nose a little swollen, maybe twice the size it usually is. You know, I don't know, let me check. But I want to say that we know that we have still a number of potential challenges to face as regulators, and I want to say on behalf of my team, in particular the head of my technical division, Dr. Cummins, and also Tyrrell Mapp, the head of the chief inspector. I think that we really have done fairly well. We want to continue to do that hard work that we need to do. And you know that I'm going to push the envelope in terms of getting that done. So with that, I want to say welcome one more time officially on behalf of the MCA to the MCA headquarters, and we are going to make this laboratory a great success in terms of it being an enabler of export and passport for export. Thank you very much, ladies.
Thank you very much, Dr. Thompson. Our next speaker is a young man who has been tasked with the responsibility of developing our agriculture sector at a time of great challenge. Prior to 2005, St. Vincent and the Grenadines enjoyed preferential treatment on the European market for our bananas. But with the removal of preferential treatment, things were not so rosy. However, this young minister has not shied away from the challenge, and he has sought, with the help of the government's broad policy, to expand our agriculture and develop new sub-industries within agriculture, so that now we have livestock and other areas that farmers are able to go into. Is this medicinal cannabis industry, and he has spoken about it, and I know some individuals may have thought, you know, oh, I'm hearing this medicinal all the time, and Sabuto is always talking about medicinal cannabis, but it takes time, it takes planning, it takes policy, and what we are launching here today is a result of all the time and effort and planning that went into this industry with Minister Caesar at the helm. Please, Minister Caesar, welcome to the podium.
Thank you very much, Sion, Honorable Prime Minister, Cabinet and Parliamentary colleagues, the Chief Medical Officer, the CEO of the Medicinal Cannabis Authority and staff, representatives here from various ministries and departments, traditional cultivators, and our Rastafari brothers and sisters. Let us give them a special welcome, special round of applause. Private sector representatives, the CEO and team from Caribbean Gold Standards, and I want to also recognize the entire family is here with us from the United States of America. The representative of the FAO, the media, those who are following us on radio and live stream. Definitely it is an honor and a pleasure to be here this morning. Success can be very humbling. I want to first thank Almighty God for His blessings. As I sat there and I looked to my right, I saw two young ladies. When they were growing up in Hopewell and the other community, if the question was asked of them, what do you want to do when you grow up? And they answered, I want to be testing marijuana, cannabis. I see them laughing. I know their parents would have been deeply annoyed. Well, I want to welcome these two young ladies, if you can just show a wave, who are two of the newest employees in St. Vincent and the Grenadines who will be working here with the lab. In 2005, when I returned to St. Vincent and the Grenadines and started to practice law as a prosecutor, a Monday morning at this time, I will be at the Serious Offences Court. And one thing I used to do a lot, I try to get the cannabis matters out early. Well, we have come a very long way as an island, as a region, and the world is changing before our very eyes. We have established a mantra in the Ministry of Agriculture that medicinal wellness begins and ends with science. We have approached the International Narcotics Control Board, and they said to us that any plant in this world can be used for scientific research and for medicinal purposes. There is no dispute about that. And what we decided to do in St. Vincent and the Grenadines is to establish a modern medicinal wellness industry which is competitive, aimed at producing high quality products, and importantly, will integrate the traditional cultivators of cannabis and the traditional producers of other forms of nutraceuticals. I must posit, importantly, that the modern medicinal wellness industry is many-sided, and we are here to deal with cannabis, but importantly, the birth of the psychedelics industry in St. Vincent and the Grenadines has gone beyond just its embryonic stages of development. Among us is one Cy Campbell, who has worked in St. Vincent and the Grenadines for the last 24 months to look at how we can frame and shape in a pioneering sense the establishment of another arm of the modern medicinal wellness industry. And St. Vincent and the Grenadines and Jamaica, we are leaders in CARICOM and in the hemisphere as it pertains to the development of not only cannabis, but also the opportunities for the psychedelics industry. Today, we are here to witness and to celebrate the opening of the lab. But we do so against a backdrop and within the context and framework that hundreds of years we have seen plants moved from various countries and continents to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. As far back as when the Caribs and the Arawaks came from South America, they brought plants with them, and they also brought with them traditional forms of medicine. Our ancestors from Africa brought with them plants as well. Our brothers and sisters from Asia, when they came as indentured workers, they came with their plants and their traditional practices in medicine. And we have plants here also from Europe. So what we are here today witnessing is the opening of a lab that will create an opportunity for investors, for researchers, for citizens of St. Vincent and the Grenadines interested in the science of the development of plants and fungi to be used for medicine. I was informed this morning that already 3 research companies will be migrating to St. Vincent and the Grenadines from Thailand, from Portugal, and South Africa. Already publicly traded companies in Canada have invested and will continue to invest in research and development in the modern medicinal wellness industry. Last year, the government signed a memorandum of understanding with the government and people of Ghana, because we recognize that when we look around our country, there are many plants here from Africa, particularly from Ghana, and we wanted to have an exchange of information, and we are going to reap the fruits of that MOU right here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines in due course. We are going to have a discussion with the Ministry of Agriculture in Gabon, because the research has already proven that there are plants here that the people in Gabon are using for medicinal purposes. And all of this will take place within a regulated framework, a framework that ensures that there is non-diversion, and that when we do our audit at the end of every year, we can report to the International Narcotics Control Board that what we are doing is definitely above board. We have started discussions with the Secretariat of the OECS to ensure that what we are doing here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines will not only benefit the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, but investors in other member states of the OECS would also be able to benefit. And I was advised by the CEO of the MCA that we have started discussions with the community college. It's definitely an exciting time for science in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and may God richly bless this company, this corporation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister Caesar. And I'm quite happy, and I'm sure it's not coincidental, that today's exercise extols science at a time when individuals with very little or no scientific knowledge question science and presents the alternative forms of science. When in 2001 Dr. Gonsalves became Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, he recognized the need to transform our economy into one that is, as he said he wants a modern, post-colonial economy that is once local, regional, and global. And what we see is exactly that. That growth, that expansion of the economy that is modern, that is competitive, and that's post-colonial. Dr. Gonsalves is going to address us this morning on how this is coming together as he works the policy of developing this economy. A former employee of the MCA, since retired, would be given a special honor. Let me now invite those involved, Dr. Thompson, the special employee, Mr. Raul Teixeira, to please come to the podium.
Rossine has given me some proper protocol instructions that I should go down in the front to this. But Raul is one of our inspectors. He has a long history of working in the banana industry, notably in the whole area of standards in terms of assessing farmers and training them in terms of how to meet the standards. Now that we are about to make this particular leap in terms of doing audits and so, Raul has now retired. He's gone through some significant losses in his life in terms of recently his wife and more recently his father. And we love Raul, and we thought that it was fitting today to present this plaque to him. I'm hoping that in the future, with all his skills and his experience in the whole area of standards, we could also re-engage him in some small way to assist us in these particular things. So with this, I would like, Raul, please, if we could go down in front. Your retirement, presented to Raul Teixeira, in sincere appreciation for your dedicated years of service with the Medicinal Cannabis Authority. We hope that you enjoy your well-deserved retirement, probably until we ask you to step out a bit. So on behalf of the MCA, yes, sure. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and congratulations to Mr. Raul Teixeira. A round of applause again for him, please. And now it gives me great pleasure to announce the featured speaker for this morning, the one who has led this country with vision since being elected as Prime Minister, the one whose vision speaks to the creation of a post-colonial competitive economy, a modern economy that is local, regional, and global. And so to tell us more about this economy that is being constructed and developed for the benefit of Vincentians, let's welcome Dr. the Honorable Ralph Gonsalves.
Mr. Master of Ceremonies, the members of Cabinet who are here, the CEO of the Medical Cannabis Authority, Dr. Thompson, and of course we are very happy to have with us Mr. Matthias Piasecki, the CEO of Caribbean Global Standards Labs, and his delegation, all the children. This is an extended family. It's a very good sign always to see and serious professionals are connected to their children and showing love and caring. And of course, the employees of the MCA and other distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the members of the media, and persons who are listening to us via the radio and I believe any other of the internet platforms. I want to begin by congratulating all those who have been involved in the establishment of this important laboratory. And we have heard There were speakers before addressed its critical significance to this industry, the medicinal cannabis industry. But we have come to this stage because of a great deal of hard work and careful thought as to how we should develop a very sound, well-regulated and profitable medicinal cannabis industry, to create jobs and foreign exchange, and to lift the economy in critical ways. Because many of us live our lives daily focusing on providing for our families, and going to church on Saturday or Sundays and worshiping our God. Very often we do not take enough time and sit back and reflect on our journey and the immense changes that have taken place and where we need to go. St. Vincent and the Grenadines, between 1763, when the British assumed suzerainty of this country, and the closing years of the 20th century, we had particular economic arrangements which determine our lives and livelihoods and the contours of our society. Between 1763 and the closing years of the 20th century, our country had an economy based primarily on one of the following agricultural commodities: sugar, tobacco, cotton, arrowroot, and bananas. Alongside other minor crops, indeed tobacco didn't quite rise in St. Vincent to quite the same extent as sugar and arrowroot and cotton and bananas. But alongside those major crops, at different points in our history, there were subordinate crops. Ground provisions, some fruits and vegetables, a little bit of coffee and a little bit of cocoa. And at a certain period of time in our history, like for instance during the Second World War, when we couldn't export the major crops due to Hitler's destroyers on the seas, the major export crop was ground provisions to Trinidad and Barbados. We had to feed people in our neighborhood. But each of those crops, each of them, was supported by either subsidies at home and or preferential markets in Britain, the colonial power. Therefore, the price that we receive for commodities invariably was a price which was not really competitive, but because of the trading arrangements. And of course, there were reciprocal arrangements. We bought motor cars not from Japan but from Britain, for example. And we didn't buy American khaki, we bought British khaki. And so in this protected market, Britain got its benefits, and so too we did. But because it wasn't a free trade arrangement, the benefits were not available to the consumers on either side of the bargain. But the important thing to recognize is that it was either subsidies within and or preferential markets overseas, buttressed by cheap labor, an unlimited supply of cheap labor. First, of course, between 1763 and 1838, the labor was slave labor. And after 1838, quote unquote free labor, but labor which was still infused by the residue of slave relations and a plantation economy. And of course, at various points, indentured laborers were brought in for a short period of time. That's how my foreparents came originally in 1845 from Madeira. And those members of the Indian community or descendants of the Indian community who we see here today came between the period 1861 and 1881. As the Second World War ended, there began to be a discussion in the region, and it came to St. Vincent a little later, to have light manufacturing commodities being produced. Screwdriver industries, they were called. Industrialization by invitation. Again, they had significant protection because they were engaged with the import substitution, and barriers were put up for competitive commodities, and special arrangements were made externally. And of course, in the period, particularly from the 1960s and 70s, some trickling of tourism, but that is limited by the nature of our infrastructure linked to the lack of availability of international air transportation. As the dawning years of the 21st century arrived, we began to see remarkable changes taking place in our economy, determined by the altering nature of exchange relations, exchange trade relations between our country and others. Preferences went. Sugar, bananas. Britain entered the single European market on January the 1st, 1993. And subsequent challenges to the banana industry, we saw the demise of that particular industry. Couldn't compete anymore with bananas from Latin America and from West Africa, for example. I'm giving the sketches, the outlines of the nature of the economy, and when we arrived in office in 2001 March. Before we arrived, there were some efforts made to turn around the economy from a good space one, with the limitations I'm talking about, to a more service-based economy. But the full extent of that, at the level required to propel self-sustaining economic growth, certain elements were missing. What are among the critical ones? First of all, we had very little skilled persons trained. Small number of people went to university, very small number. The community college had a very limited intake of persons. There was no international airport here, and no jet airport in the Grenadines. There were insufficient advances made in other critical areas like housing and health and other supported facilities in culture and recreation. So when we arrived, it became necessary and desirable to chart a different and better and fresh strategic path. But a different and fresh and better strategic path is not just conjured up out of the imagination of human beings. To be sure, you must have imagination and creativity, but it calls for thorough examination of our economy, our political economy, and how to move forward. And the broad frame which was set was to embark upon a quest to build a modern, competitive, many-sided, post-colonial economy, which was at once national, regional, and global. That is why we have spent a lot of time and effort in deepening regional integration, including trade relations, and that we embarked on an activist foreign policy, an outward look to link the interests of our people's humanization with what we did in the external. And lots of details. Detailed policies and programs were within that strategic frame. I don't need to go into that now, but I wanted to set that particular historical and conceptual background to understand where we locate the modern medicinal cannabis industry. But it is important to bear in mind that significant differences between the modern competitive many-sided post-colonial economy and that which was before, apart from those of services as distinct from goods and a number of different sets of commodities and the like. We had to recognize that we couldn't develop the country anymore, or at all, on the basis on unlimited supplies of cheap labor. we had to do it on the basis of unlimited supplies of knowledge. And the manifestation of what we are seeing here is the application of that particular proposition. But knowledge is not acquired overnight by a people. You have to do a thoroughly reformed educational system, and we launched an education revolution in order to get the levels of skills. And we still not there in all the skill sets that we need, but we are far more advanced than hitherto. Accordingly, if you look at the income of individuals, the average per capita income in 2001, it was under 10,000 EC dollars. Today, it's over 22,000 EC dollars on an average. The challenge in carrying out a complete reset of the economy means inevitably that there will be certain dislocations, and certain persons will advance more than others. It has nothing to do with political allegiances or religious connections or friendship. It doesn't have anything to do with those things. If in 2001 you were 45 years old and planting bananas, there were fewer banana holes to be dug subsequently, and therefore the extent of your income, if you were digging banana holes, would be challenged, and you have to develop other skill sets in agriculture. And where persons fell below their usual standards of income, even though around them the boats are rising, metaphorically, you have to provide proper social safety nets to hold things together as you go forward. And of course, as you know, the safety nets in this country have deepened and widened immensely of all types. Persons are growing older. When I was born in 1946, the average lifespan of a Vincentian male at birth was 45 years. Therefore, if all things remained equal, I should have been dead in 1991. There's some people who don't like me, so they'll say, I wish if you had died then. And some would still like to see me die now, before the good Lord is ready for me. But that is the nature of the business in which I am. But I always say in that regard, I joke with the cabinet and said, those who would like to see a man of 75 being taken out, it's an entirely rational thing for them to do. Because if you take me out at 75, all you do is accelerate my demise by a few years. And there are a lot of younger fellas behind, like Saboto and Camilo and so on and so forth, will continue the enterprise. So it's irrational. But of course, persons who want to behave in that manner are not always wholly rational. Now, in relation to marijuana. St. Vincent and the Grenadines, like several countries in the Caribbean and Latin America, became in the 1970s a prisoner of the war on drugs, the war against cannabis, which was part and parcel of the attempt by President Nixon and the Republicans with their Southern strategy with law and order. And they want to stamp out this thing. We had on our books marijuana legislation in relation to marijuana in 1937. We said it is a prescribed drug, and we have moved from prescription to now we are saying it is a prescribed drug for certain ailments. It's an interesting journey from prescription to prescription. And it's really in the 1970s that we begin to see increased consumption of marijuana, or recognition of it, and the state apparatus following on the prescription of the United States for law and order and the war on drugs. And everybody now recognizes that the war on drugs, this global war on drugs, in the way it was being fought, has completely failed and caused a lot of harm. And our country is locked into that vortex. And international regulations were put in place which buttressed much of that. Though the International Convention on Narcotics offered possibilities for you to find space if you were creative enough to find a space. Because within it were exemptions for medical use, research and scientific use, not as some people say, to legalize marijuana, but to depenalize it. Very important difference. I know persons make distinctions between legalizing or decriminalizing. That's not where the real difference is. The real difference is between decriminalization and and legalization on the one hand and depenalization on the other. That you don't have to give penalties of a criminal type for persons who have small quantities for their personal use. And of course, in time, we see 20 odd states in the Union, in the United States, quote unquote, decriminalizing, even legalizing, in some cases depenalizing, but the legalization and decriminalization wasn't easy to do that within the framework of the convention, and the United States of America and Canada and large countries could do that, but not small St. Vincent and the Grenadines because of banking issues. So we had to go for depenalization. And to establish the marijuana industry as an export-led industry, but one in which the traditional cultivators and the local investors had a critical role, but understanding with crystal clarity that the traditional cultivators and the the local investors had to link in one way or the other with significant foreign investors in order to make the industry truly modern, truly competitive, and export oriented. And why do I say export orientation? Let's take St. Vincent and the Grenadines with 110,000 persons. If you grow groundnuts for 110,000 people in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, all you'll have is a cottage industry. If you grow marijuana just for the persons inside of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, it would be a cottage industry. But what happened is that traditional growers who went into the trade illegally established export links illegally, which brought heavy penalties when you were caught. But if you want to grow it for medicinal purposes to export, you have to construct the industry very carefully, and you have to bring science and technology into it, and you have to address the complicated banking issues, because it remains marijuana, the possession of it in the United States, however many countries at the end, at the state level, how many of those states are decriminalizing or legalizing. It is still an offense at the federal level, and the government in the United States of America is the one which controls banking at the federal level, and you can't enter the banking system unless the federal government were to permit you. And what does that mean? If you don't have a properly regulated industry within the context of the International Narcotics Convention, which is what we have done, to find the space, you're not going to be able to have the requisite banking arrangements to do the trade in medicinal cannabis. And of course, you can't do the trade in medicinal cannabis unless you have a quality assurance laboratory and kind of investigation which will go on here, because you have to export in accordance with standards which are certified. That is how it has to come together. So those who, for opportunistic reasons, as the opposition said to me in Parliament, what happened? Are you coward? Why are you raising international law? Break the international law. Well, you see, the only problem is that if I pick and choose which international laws to agree to, those who are powerful can pick and choose those which they want to impose on me. For instance, powerful countries can't just intervene in St. Vincent and the Grenadines militarily because they have the power. Because we have principles established for non-intervention and non-interference, central pillars at the United Nations. We can't say we accept that and then we don't accept the International Narcotics Convention. We can agitate in the various fora to alter aspects of the International Narcotics Convention, but where it is as the law, it is the law. And we have some strange alliances in the international political economy, not wanting to make changes. Imagine Russia, Iran, and the United States of America holding one common head on that issue. You see, it's a complicated business requiring sensible leadership, creative leadership, And what we have done here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines is to have a sensible and well-regulated medicinal cannabis industry. It's in its early stages, which passes international legal muster. And I want to say this, that everybody who comes to the Caribbean, or anybody who goes to other countries where they seek to have a modern medicinal cannabis industry, they tell you that the model to look at, the best regulated framework, is that of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I ain't come from Mars. I have my feet firmly planted on the ground. I had made it plain from the very beginning that as the medicinal cannabis industry takes its time to get off the ground, there will be, alongside with this, an illegal industry. If a man is growing marijuana in the hills and he has the transport arrangements to take his weed to Barbados or St. Lucia, where they haven't gone, where we have gone, at least not yet, and they have an illegal market there, they will take the risks in the illegal market. Many of them, of course, as I will point out, there are several traditional cultivators who have decided that that is too risky. I don't really want to stay in the hills. I want to come down and live a normal life and be with my children as they go into secondary school to take advantage of this new world and the possibilities which are being open to them. Because people make their choices, and choices have consequence. Now, so that is the framework and that is the backdrop, and we amended the legislation in relation to allowing for small quantities and a ticketing system. It's depenalized, you don't have a record, and we have through the Rehabilitation of Criminal Offenders Act, wipe out records, and we need to review that to see if we can even liberalize the expunging of records more than we have done already. Because all of these things have to take place when other moving parts are happening and as the industry is evolving. Now, where are we? COVID and the volcanic eruption have held us back in the pace at which we are developing this industry. But despite those challenges, and we must remember that we began essentially in 2019, and last year, March the 11th, is when the WHO declared a global pandemic with COVID. And then, of course, in April this year, we had the cataclysmic eruptions of La Soufrière volcano. And over the last 5 months, we are dealing with the fallout. So essentially, we have had less time unfettered by COVID and the volcano to address the development of the industry than otherwise would have been the case. But still, we have made good progress, given all the limitations. Let me get one issue out of the way first in relation to licensing fees. In 2019, we collected $5.3 million in license fees. But you remember, these licensing fees would have a schedule of payments over a period of time, and when you obtain the license, you pay more money, and as you go along, the sums decline for those existing licensees. And in 2020, there was just under $300,000, and in 2021, just over $13,000. But we are coming to a stage now where licenses would have to be renewed, and we'd expect another cycle of fees. Important to realize that among the licensees are 74 traditional cultivators and 10 traditional cultivator groups consisting of 110 members who have received licenses free of charge, and they're due to have their renewal, and all they pay for their renewal is just $100 EC application fee. We are the only country that specifically carved out a place for traditional cultivators. You see, what happened is this. You take Jamaica. Jamaica has a population of 3 million, and they have 2 million tourists. Let us say that 1 million of the Jamaican people will smoke weed, and 1 million of the tourists will smoke weed. That's, you have a market of 2 million. We don't have anywhere near to that market, so they focused a great deal of their effort in getting the local paradigm in order, and of course they consider that it had certain political spin-offs in electoral terms. Antigua did theirs, and again, it was local matters. I don't think Antigua produces weed in any significant quantities. But we fashioned our regulatory framework sui generis, of its own special kind, but taking into account all the other factors I've spoken about, including the international legal framework. And we took a lot of time over it. You may recall, I remember one day I read an article in a newspaper. There was a lawyer, a good man, who had come from a neighboring country and was working for one of the marijuana companies, which was a prospective licensing. And he was talking very large sums. And when I saw it, I was more than a little concerned. And you may recall that I coined the formulation that, contrary to what some persons are saying, let us keep our feet on the ground and understand that at the end of the medicinal cannabis rainbow, there is not a pot of gold. That you have to work hard and smart in this particular industry. And we have a short window before the federal government decides to go into the medicinal cannabis industry. Because when they go, if we don't carve out a special place, we will be importing mackweed in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. You eat McDonald or Captain, what's the fellow who in charge of Kentucky, the man? Captain. The Cornell weed. We may get that, you know? We may get that. Mackweed or Cornell weed. So that fast weed. But so we have a window in which we have to act very swiftly, all of us. Now, where the progress we have made in practical terms? Licenses have invested over $20 million thus far, excluding license fees, as part of the setup of their various enterprises, providing income for over 200 Vincentians temporarily. And close to 100 persons are employed currently in cultivation, transportation, drying, packaging, storage, and processing activities. Processing meaning manufactured activities. A significant number of these persons employed are young women and young men, while the traditional cultivators are playing a leading role on several farms as master growers, playing that role in private sector entities. But it is not just what persons have brought $20 million or thereabouts EC to do the startup of these, excluding the fees. They've imported critical capital assets. The licenses have brought over $6.7 million in capital assets, encompassing greenhouses, irrigation systems, and equipment related to cultivation, harvesting, transportation, pickup trucks for instance, drying, dehumidifiers, packaging, storage, and manufacturing. Just this year alone, up to June, approximately $5 million in sophisticated equipment have landed in St. Vincent and Grenadines as part of the thrust towards a modern medicinal cannabis industry that is grounded in high quality and international standards. Cultivation. 2 foreign investor companies and a major local investor company commenced cultivation activities in 2020 and are refining on-farm activities to achieve good agricultural collection practices, GACP, which will enable export to European markets. Several local and traditional cultivators have entered partnership with one of the major investor companies, Caribbean Cannabis Company, and are now supplying that company with raw cannabis product under the licensing regime. Through new restructuring protocols, a US-based investor company, Satika Medical, achieved the setting up of a bank account in June 2021 and has now recommenced setting up of a large greenhouse and other on-farm facilities at Mongrenan. I think that land at Mongrenan was owned by the former leader of the opposition, my friend Arnim Eustace. That land. Manufacturing and export. One licensee, Caribbean Cannabis Company, commenced processing of oils on March the 11th, cannabis oil, March the 17th, sorry, this year, at its facility in Spring on the windward side of the island. 2 other major manufacturing facilities are at an advanced stage of development, with one anticipated to become operational in the 3rd quarter of this year. And 2 licensees, 2 companies have expressed readiness to export. Analytic service provider facility, that's where we are now, with the medical cannabis testing laboratory. This state-of-the-art facility here, which we'll see a little later this morning or as we get close to midday, I think. We're at midday. if they're listening to me, I just want them to start that meeting, which I'm supposed to have at midday at the office at the cabinet room. You can start it, I'll be there shortly. We have constructed the MCA, the Medical Cannabis Authority of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We construct the physical facilities here at a cost of $700,000 easy. The lab is equipped with over $2 million EC dollars worth of analytic testing equipment provided by Caribbean Gold Standards, a company that operates similar laboratories in Florida, the United States of America. Clearly, we have demonstrated yet again, we'll provide the framework, the regulatory framework, we provide the policy, we put down the physical structure for the laboratory, and we have a private-public partnership. You bring in your equipment and you bring in your expertise, and we work together. As part of this private-public partnership, Caribbean Gold Standards will manage the operation of the lab and will work steadfastly towards the goal of achieving, as Gerald Thompson pointed out, ISO 17025 standards in laboratory operations. The lab would provide a suite of tests, and hitherto not available in our country, or indeed in any other OECS country. It will provide an analysis of products both in relation to the potency of cannabis and to show the absence of disease in the cannabis. This laboratory establishes a new era in the export of products from SVG, where we will be able to certify with the highest level of accuracy that all products meet and surpass international standards. In fact, the companies I talk about who are producing and who are going to export, they have their own standards, but they have to get it certified here in order to export it. Both from here and for the credibility and for the when they're imported overseas in Europe, Britain, North America, and the like. I've also been advised that other produce, including fish, number commodities to be analyzed here. You know, we are having shortly, in another month or so, we are going to be opening the foreign investor Rainforest Seafoods, a 10 million plus facility at Caliacua. In order to export their lobster, their conch, the fish products, they're going to want to have proper testing being done, and it's easier to have a laboratory like this to test it rather than for they themselves to set up the test. In any case, it's an independent facility here and managed in accordance with international standards. The same thing will go for arrowroot. You know, sometimes we will sell the arrowroot starch, and the arrowroot starch reaches the destination and they tell you, well, listen, we had promised to pay you X dollars for this, but we have to pay you X minus 2 because it's not up to the standard. And it's very difficult for you to question it in an authoritative manner. Herbs and spices can also be tested. And our Medicinal Cannabis Authority has received inquiries from companies in neighboring islands who are exploring the possibilities of using this lab. Without this lab, it will be virtually impossible to develop an export-oriented medicinal cannabis industry. So what we are engaged in here is a critical pillar in moving forward to get the benefits of all what we have been doing already. And the lab is also essential for ensuring that the medical cannabis available to local patients meet the highest quality and safety requirements. Clearly, this costs money and people have to be employed here. So when you're doing all the testing, you have a fee. is a commercial operation. It's not a charitable institution. They wouldn't leave Miami, our brothers and sisters here, to come down here to do charitable work. If they want to do charitable work, they'll contribute to the World Food Program, they will contribute to things of that kind, you know, Bread for Life or whatever the name of it, Red Cross or whatever, but it's a business. The final matter I want to touch on is patient access to medicinal cannabis. Our country is the first Caribbean country to have a patient access to a medical cannabis program. I don't know if you know that. The first one to have access. 120 doctors and pharmacists have been trained in prescribing of medical cannabis. 4 pharmacies are dispensing medicinal cannabis. And over 100 patients have received medicinal cannabis and have benefited from the treatment. Now, you don't have to do like my mother when she was in her 80s had to do. God bless her soul. She lived until she's 98. You know, she'll boil, like many other elderly persons, boil the weed to help them with the arthritis. And any other kind of ailments. Well, you have those problems, the doctor can prescribe for you this or that form of medical cannabis, properly tested here and available from experience, pharmaceutical experience elsewhere, to prescribe for people. We are making progress. We have made substantial progress. We haven't reached as far as we would have anticipated to reach by now, but we had COVID and we had the volcano, but we are getting there, as the evangelicals say, day by day, sweet Jesus. I have given you a discourse of the location of this industry in the overall strategic frame of the Sustainable Development Program of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I understand a couple of analyst technologists have been hired here. They are children of the education revolution. Making real all what I have been saying. Stay the course with us. And one thing final. You can't believe in the science here and don't believe in the science in relation to the COVID vaccine.
Yes. All right.
I am urging you very strongly to take the vaccine. It's good for you, it's good for your family, good for your neighbor, the community, and for the country. We put out some regulations, draft regulations on Friday. They're online, where frontline workers will be given a choice. For frontline workers in the public sector, doctors, nurses, police, prison officers, people who work at customs, immigration, people who work at the seaports and airports. You'll be given the choice to take the vaccine or not to take it. You have 2 possible exemptions. An exemption on medical grounds and an exemption on religious grounds. And if you get an exemption on religious grounds, that the employer, the state, can accommodate you with a job somewhere else. So you have a choice. I'm satisfied that in order for us to address all these challenges concerning COVID, the health, the economic, the social, including education, and the security, we have to get our vaccination rate up to herd immunity, population immunity, 75–80%. We're a long way from that. I know some public servants, nurses and the like, police, prison officers and so forth, are reluctant, have a hesitance. I say it's time to abandon your hesitance. Those who are anti-vax reflected it, that you should take the vaccine. But if you're in a frontline position and you don't take the vaccine, you wouldn't be able to go to work, and your absence from work would be taken as an act of misconduct, and you may be disciplined under the public service regulations appropriately, or by any other written law. Now, 193 countries in this world are the United Nations. They are all agreed on the vaccine as being the most useful tool in the toolbox to fight the vaccine, to fight COVID-19. Cuba and America don't agree on a lot, but they agree on that. America and Iran don't agree on much, but they agree on that. Iran and Germany don't agree on much, but they agree on that. Russia and several countries in the world don't agree on many things, but they agree on that. North Korea, every country in the United Nations, everyone. And those who speak about faith, from the days of the Old Testament, faith is not held in opposition to reason. God has given humanity, human beings, the ingenuity to devise a vaccine, to devise vaccines and other medicines to help us to live longer and healthier. You can't put them opposite each other. Like some of you say, COVID can't pass the threshold of the tenement of my church because the blood of Jesus is inside of here. Well, anybody who says that, they're not looking at reality, because those very churches catch COVID and some have died. That's the real thing. Pope Francis says, take the vaccine. It is an act of love for your family, your neighbor, your community, for humanity. The Seventh-day Adventists have come out with a statement saying, there is no theological objection to the vaccine in the Seventh-day Adventist faith. Take it. We have heard the similar things from the Anglicans, the Methodists, the Catholics, from the Pentecostal, from a range of evangelical churches. One or two evangelical churches who are linked in one way or the other in some anti-vax church in the deep south of those United States may have a different position. And interestingly, even the Jehovah's Witnesses have made statements that trust the science of the vaccine, take the vaccine. I am sure that as more and more people are going to take the vaccine. We promise you that we'll have different vaccines available. We have the AstraZeneca, we have the Sputnik, and we have the Pfizer. There are countries in Africa and in Asia, far bigger countries than we are, don't have any of them, or who don't have a sufficiency of them. We have a sufficiency. In fact, we had more than enough, and we have given away thousands, 35,000 doses. And what we have, we can give away, or some of what we have. The regulations for the public sector, you have until 4 o'clock on the 8th of September to send submissions. Then those submissions would be reviewed by the Attorney General's chambers, and the Ministry of Health will be brought to Cabinet, and they'll be finally issued. And then after they're issued, the regulations will come into place 1 month after, giving you another month so that you can organize yourself and reflect further. And it's important to state that these regulations will come to an end. The life of these regulations will come to an end when the Minister of Health brings to an end the public health emergency order. There's one such order in force. Everybody who reads that will tell you that it passes constitutional muster very easily. It's a good set of regulations. Please, let's not have a fight. But I repeat here what I repeat everywhere. The Cabinet of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we are united 100% on these regulations, the approach which we have. And in my case, I'm very persuaded by the writings of Paul, servant of the Lord, called to be an apostle, who said that teachers must teach, prophets must prophesy, and leaders must lead. And I'm a leader. I'm leading. I assure you that this anchor will hold. It doesn't matter how the billows roll. Whatever strife there may be, this anchor will hold. I'm responsive to people. I'm responsible to them. And in the process, I have to take account of the public interest. And I have to lead with science, not superstition. I have to lead with facts and reality, not conspiratorial theories. I make those points calmly and with a patience, but I have absolutely no doubt that I make those points very firmly. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gonsalves, and thank you for your very sterling leadership, especially at a time of great challenge. We will do the vote of thanks, and then we'll move to the cutting of ribbon, following which the head table will do a tour, and after they've exited the building, individuals will be escorted in much smaller groups as part of the broader COVID protocols, because we do not want to have too many persons inside at the same time. Rhea Edwards.
Good afternoon, everyone. Please allow me to adopt that the protocol has already been established. It is a privilege and a great joy for me to extend the vote of thanks to all those who have contributed in one way or the other to make this ceremony a huge success. The cause in all of our successes, in everything possible, in everything hoped for and achieved, is the Almighty God. I therefore extend heartfelt gratitude to Pastor Chieftain Charles for invoking the presence of the Almighty here today. To Mr. Ronnie Small, thank you for such a beautiful steel pan rendition of our national anthem, and also for the lovely entertainment segment. St. Vincent and the Grenadines is indeed a blessed island, flourishing with talent. Permit me to express our sincere gratitude and appreciation to this esteemed panel. Parliamentary Representative for South Windward, Honorable Minister Frederick Stevenson for his kind welcoming remarks. CEO of Caribbean Gold Standards, Mr. Matthias Piasecki, for choosing SVG and for staying the course towards the development of this beautiful facility, considering the challenges created by COVID-19 and the explosive eruption of La Soufrière volcano. The CEO of MCA, Dr. Gerald Thompson, for your visionary leadership and the enabling passion you provided for the establishment of this facility. Today must be an especially proud day for you. Minister of Agriculture, Forestry, Fisheries, Rural Transformation, Industry and Labour, Honorable Minister Saboto Caesar, for your insightful policy guidance, for the high level of confidence you entrust in us at the MCA, and for always making yourself available to assist in resolving challenges and capitalizing on opportunities. And the Honorable Prime Minister, Dr. Gonsalves, for your formidable leadership and the high level of political will you placed in the establishment of an export-oriented medicinal cannabis industry. At the MCA, our day-to-day work is guided by something you have said from the beginning of this journey. There is not a pot of gold at the end of the cannabis rainbow. You must work hard and smart. The building of a first-of-its-kind facility in SVG and the OECS required the first-of-its-kind effort from the many contractors, consultants, and suppliers who participated in this project. In recognition of this effort, I would like to thank Mr. Alistair Brown, the architect responsible for designing the building, Made Heavy Equipment, Blocks, Trucking and Construction Limited, Courage Hazel Inc., Wanson Vincent Group Inc., HT Defrators and Company Limited, and William Electronic Services Limited. The MCA has benefited greatly from an understanding of the importance of this facility to all the intention that is shared among these companies. Together, we have worked to make this vision a reality. Special thanks to Third Element for providing us with this song today. Additional thanks goes to the various government agencies who have contributed time and effort to the completion of this project. We have often reached out for guidance and support as challenges presented themselves throughout the construction and outfitting stages. And we have found the public service to be full of capable and supportive individuals and departments without whom we would not be here today. Organizing an event of this nature is not at all an easy task. The MCA staff, with support from Invest SVG, and the research and development staff here at Rivulet worked extremely hard over the weekend to get everything in order for today. You deserve congratulations. I take this opportunity to extend our most sincere thanks to all our invited guests who took the time out to be here. Your support is appreciated. Permit me to also put on record our appreciation to the members of the media. Your role in today's society has become ever more important, and we look forward to an excellent coverage of this event. And not forgetting our Master of Ceremony, Mr. Sian Marshall, the son of the most beautiful constituent in SVG, not Leeward. Thank you for sharing today's event. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, we are sincerely grateful for your presence. Thank you very much, and do enjoy this lovely tour of the facility.